Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be making over a few thrifted items and we're going to start with this mirror. I found it at the thrift store and I think I paid $2.99 for it, and my first plan was to take the mirror out, but it was just those little screws on the edges were flathead and they were tiny, and so I kind of was afraid to take those apart. So I've just decided I'm going to paint this whole piece one solid color. And so I'm using the drop cloth here. And yes, you can paint over a mirror just like you can glass. So just put a couple of coats. I didn't even clear coat this. A lot of times I will when it's glass, but I didn't clear coat it, and 2 coats covered it well. So I just put a coat on here, let it dry well, and make sure you get down into those grooves well, and then put a second coat on. Generally, you can buy these little mirrors for little or nothing at a thrift store. And if you can think beyond that mirror, I know that most of us don't need a little mirror this size for the wall, but just think wall art, because you can make some beautiful wall art out of this. So like I said, a couple of coats, and then it's ready for the next step. Now I've got some old sheet music here, and if you don't have sheet music and you would like this look, you can print this off online a lot of times, and it looks like old sheet music, but I just happen to have some. Now what I'm doing here is just kind of pressing into those edges just so I can get my size. And then I just go around and tear the edge just as close to that as I can, but I want it to be just inside that a little bit because I want to see those torn edges. So I just keep kind of tearing at it until I get it the size that I want it, and then I'll be ready to move on to the next step. And I'm going to take this sheet music and put a stencil on it. And I found some scripture that I thought was really appropriate for the Valentine season. And it's, "Oh, how he loves us." A lot of times when we're thinking about Valentine's Day, we think about love, but what greater love is there than God's love? So I love this scripture. Now, I struggled with this and I knew I was going to, because the scripture barely fit into my frame. And so what I'm going to do is just these top lines, I'm just going to make them a little bit closer to each other. So I just kind of carefully move that stencil up a little bit when I do that next line, and just try to hold it off the color so I don't smear any color, but that I get my placement right. And once I fix those first lines there, then the rest fits well. And I'm using this same color of kudzu that I used on the other piece because, like I said, I'm working on a vignette here. And I do that often when I'm redecorating a space in the store. Then I'll just do a few items together that I know will coordinate well. And that helps me to be able to set up my vignette easily. But I'm really liking this kudzu. It's a good crisp green, but then when you add that white wax to it, it's so pretty and just so springy. Guys, I wanted to say thank you so much for all your support and all of you who subscribe to my channel and the sweet comments that just make my day. I wanted to announce that I made it to 1,000 subscribers, and that is all thanks to you guys, and you just don't know how much I appreciate it. So once I get this stencil done, then I go to work on my frame, and I'm trying a new technique here, and it's something that I just kind of came up with on my own, kind of out of necessity here, because I only had these pasty clear waxes, and I do love them, but I've never really tried to mix paint into the pasty waxes, and I wasn't sure that it would work. I do it with my liquid waxes all the time, and it works great. But so what I decided here was just to put a good thick coat of clear coat all over my frame, and then I just dipped my paintbrush into into that kudzu color and just kind of haphazardly put it all over the frame. And then I'll be able to wipe that right off, I'm hoping. And it does. I was hoping. It did work out. But so if you wonder if that works, I'm your guinea pig, and it did work. But I wouldn't do that without that clear coat first, because if you get too much in one spot, then it'll help it wipe off. But it did work out, and so I know I can do this in the future. And if I had ruined it, then I would have just cleaned it good and painted over it. So I wasn't too worried. So once I get this wiped off, and I put it around the edges and the edges of the inside also, once I get it all wiped off, I did like the look a lot, but I decided I wanted more of an aged look. So I go over this with the darker wax. And so this will have a clear wax, and then color into the clear wax, and now a dark wax. And I was really happy with the look that it had. But now, before I did this, I decided to go just around the edges of this torn paper, because when you tear paper, you get that white around the edges, and it looks torn. And if you go over it with this wax, it ages that end. And sometimes I'll just kind of burn the end. But when you burn the end, you risk catching your whole paper on fire. So this is just a lot better way, and it has the same look. So I just went over this with that, especially since I'm going to be going back and adding some antiquing wax to my frame. I wanted this whole piece to be cohesive. So I'll just use it on the paper also. And now when I put that dark wax on, I just kind of concentrate more around the edges. I put it all over it, but I concentrate more color around the edges, and I do that over the entire piece, and then it will be ready for the scripture to be added. And then that dark wax is going to settle into more places here and just give this even more dimension. So with all this wax I've been using, this piece should be really sealed. It should really be protected. So like I said, I just go over the entire piece and wipe it down. And if I get too much, then I just add a little clear wax and wipe it off. And if I need more, I'll just go another coat over it. And it's just kind of a trial and error thing. Now it's ready for the scripture. And we're just going to decoupage that on. So I'm just going to put a good liberal coat of Mod Podge on it. And the reason I'm putting a liberal coat is because this is a thicker paper. And, you know, it is antique paper, so it's kind of a crisp paper. And so it really needs to have plenty of this Mod Podge. But I do want to get that smooth so that I don't have any areas where it's bubbled up too much. And so I just put a good coat on and smooth it out both ways, and then it's ready for that paper. And so I just place that on there carefully, and then I'm just going to go over this with another coat of Mod Podge. What I'm doing here is checking that back to see where my hangers are, because more than a few times I've put my art on upside down, and then that's not a good problem when you let that dry, and you just really got to work at getting that off, and then you've got to repaint and all that. So I've been trying harder to check more carefully before I do that. But now I'm just really going over this to get out the bubbles, because in this case your bubbles will show. So once I get it adhered here, then I start at the middle and just keep working my way out both sides, because you want to push that air outward instead of inwards, because if you push it inwards, it has no place to go. So I just start from the middle and work my way out, and then I do that in the other direction also. And that's just the best way I've found to get the bubbles out. And then once this dries, it will be ready to hang. And I thought it turned out really cute. So now we're ready to move on to our next project, and that's going to be just a plate. The only thing special about this plate, I'm noticing a Pier 1 sticker here, but I'm not even going to worry about it right now because I'm not going to paint that back. I'm just going to, because I'm going with this drop cloth color, which is very similar to what's on it, so I won't have to paint the back of this one. Anyway, the thing that I was saying is special about this plate is just that it has a little bit of design on the outside of it. I wouldn't want, and you may if you want more of a simple design, I wouldn't want just a straight edge around the outside. And this particular one also has a little bit of raised design. So that's why I chose this plate, just so it has a little bit of character. And then I will be doing an antique wax on this also, and it just gives it a little bit more places for that antiquing wax to settle, and just gives it more character. But obviously you can use any plate you want. And now I've just found another scripture that will fit onto this one, and this one is "Be still and know that I'm God," and it just fit well onto this one, except that I did struggle a little bit with those corners, and I didn't want to cut my corners off, but it kept my stencil from laying down as well as I would have liked it to. But the only problem that I have is it skips a little bit, and I do have to go back and just with a small brush and just kind of touch up. And I would have had to do that somewhat anyway because, a lot of these stencils have that little separation line in the letters, and I don't like to leave that on with some of these where it's really obvious, and this is one where it is. So it really didn't take me long to just go over it and touch it up a little bit. But I'm using that same color of kudzu here and for the lettering on this. And once I get this stencil complete, then I just let it dry well, and then this plate will also be ready to get a wax on it. And I just used the same thing with this. I went ahead and put a little bit of clear wax on it in case I made a mistake, and then I went over it also with the dark wax, and that dark wax just kind of settled into all that design on the outside, and it's real subtle. It is a real subtle look, but it just makes this plate look really aged. Again, I used the clear wax first, and then now here I am adding this darker wax. And once I get this rubbed in, and then it'll be ready to put on a plate rack and use for decor. And then we'll be ready to move on to the next piece, which is this silver-plated pitcher. And I paint these a lot. They paint up really well. And this one has some design for that white wax to settle into that, of course, I'm going to be using on this. And I go over this piece. And I don't clear coat this. I go over it with a coat of the kudzu in the Dixie Belle paint, and let that dry well, and then do a second coat, and then it'll be ready for the wax. And I do paint the inside of the top of this, and I just stop at that neck there, and then when you look down into it, it has a good finished look, but you haven't painted your inside in case you want to put flowers in this. So because I'm using this darker color here, I'm not going to have to use the clear wax on this one. I can just let this dry well and then go over it with the white wax. I really love this color of green, but with the white wax, it is even prettier, and it is a really good springy color. So I just take my wax brush here, and I'm using the Jolie white wax. I'm not sponsored by them. I just happen to have some, and I do like the really waxy wax instead of the liquidy for items like this, because I don't want to take that paint off, which sometimes the liquidy waxes will try to do if you don't clear coat it first. But I just go over the entire piece and then take my soft cloth and just wipe it away. And if you don't get it enough color on it, enough of the white on it, then you can go over it again. But usually one coat will work really well. And that's all there is to this piece. It was really quick. You just paint it and wax it and you're done. Items like this you can experiment with colors on, especially in the springtime when you want just that little pop of color. I decorate very neutral in my house, so I really love to add little pops of color here and there in the shop. And I think this picture would be really pretty in blue. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my video, and I hope I've inspired you to get out and thrift and create. And if you have any problems with my video, something you would like for me to do differently, please let me know in the comments. Also, let me know in the comments what you would like to see on my channel. I hope you have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.